we did that in August. We'll do it again this August. We got everybody, we think?
Say something if you're not here. What hand is it?
This is the side of the old Flat Rock High School. This is school, and Bob Justice, my cousin right here, his father was Ernest Justice, J-U-S-T-U-S, who was principal at this school for many, many, many years. The Board of Education recently has, or the Henderson County School Educational Foundation has recently put up this monument for this site. The original school, the one-room schools in Flat Rock go back, Bob will tell you about those, and then another smaller schools that were on the site. But this was a consolidated high school from the 1920s up. They closed East Flat Rock as a high school. They ended up closing the Green River Tuxedo Zirconia area, what they call Tuxedo, as a high school. They ended up closing Valley Hill as a high school. And all these other schools that at that time were going 1 through 11 grades, they closed the high school parts down, and all those kids had to come to this high school. This was a high school until 1960, when East Henderson High School was built, and then they consolidated them all into East Henderson High School. At that time, it became a junior high school. Called it a junior high school, 7th and 8th grades only. But it was a consolidated junior high school, so you had students coming from this entire half of Henderson County, all the way south of Hendersonville. Crab Creek, Valley Hill, Green River, Tuxedo, Zirconia, Mountain Page, Macedonia, East Flat Rock, upward, all came to this school for junior high and high school. In 1971, an arsonist burnt a good bit of it, and Bob's going to talk more about that. And we're going to show you what remains of the old school. And what they have done is they've turned it into this Singleton Center, and they've put all these other buildings and things here. The old 1847, I think, Flat Rock Post Office is now that book exchange right down there. You can walk to it from back down here. Where the Blue Ridge Fire Department's auxiliary substation is a lot of the Flat Rock. All this was built on the rock. And back in there were the ball fields for the school, and you could out there stand on base and find arrowheads, while you're playing baseball. So all of this was part of the rock and the old Saluda Trail. This very historical thing for many, many reasons. So I'm going to let Bob talk about the school. Okay.
You want me to bring the picture up here?
Right down here is the picture of the school. Let them go to the picture.
I guess the first thing you might wonder is, what the heck are you doing with a big picture like that in the trunk of your car? I was on the committee that placed the monument, and one of the things we're going to do, this picture goes in this building. This is the remnants. You see this this brick structure right here? That is the remaining part of the building. It was added, it was a classroom addition put on about 1950-51. And when the school, we're actually standing in the hallway came right down where you're standing. When this burned, they tore down everything that burned, but this was not damaged because of this protection. But this, one thing you can tell from the walkway that went up to the front of the school was almost exactly where this entryway is here. So the school was right here. We're probably in the edge of this classroom right here. So
It faced the road.
yeah, it faced the road. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not oriented right. It's turned this way. And anyway, this building was built in 1925, and there were some predecessors. Again, I've got pictures that you wonder, what in the world are you doing with all those pictures? Well, this was part of what we did for that marker. The predecessor buildings were here. Now, this building, there's several shots of it, here, 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 and there. That's all the same building. It was located about 150 yards on the edge of what used to be the athletic field. And these are some of the classes and so forth. But this is a wonderful picture here. Look, there's a kid up in the tree, there's some hanging out the window, doing all kind of things. And just prior to this building being built, it started in 1906. There were some old houses down on the other side of the athletic field that we used as a school. And in 1905, there was no place for school, so they actually held it in Peace's Grocery. This is an early picture in 1905. This is a picture of that period of Peace's Grocery, which is the wrinkled egg. And this picture was made right out in front, and what is the Greenville Highway, right in front of this building, and you can see the old post office right there.
What year is that? Can you read that?
This is about 1905.
That's where the book exchange is now.
This is the book exchange right there. Yeah. But they didn't hold school there. It's just in the background. The school was held 1 year in Peace's Grocery. And I guess, anyway, you can look at those if you want. The buildings you see over there are not part of the original. Mrs. Singleton had those built, but this building was built in the early 30s during the Depression, and it housed the lunchroom and library. And then the far building is the old gymnasium, and it was built in the Depression era. And it's been converted into condos. And then down where the homes were built, that was the athletic field. There was a baseball field down there. And then the 1906 school, that you see here, was just above that on the left.
When was that torn down?
I'm going to say it was torn down right shortly after this 1925 building was built, but I really don't know when it was torn down.
Well, the 25 building was torn down when?
In 71, it burned.
Oh, that was,
Yeah, in
it burned
71.
as
Yeah, it was a high school until 1960, and then with the consolidation of East and West, it became a junior high. And it was a junior high until 1971, and that's when the arsonist burned it.
But wasn't it used, did Blue Ridge Community College have some classes, because I remember coming
Yes,
over here and taking.
and they used the gymnasium, and they used, Ms. Singleton leased, I think, these classrooms for these
I
schools.
came over here for rugs,
Wasn't
I
this
think
called-
I remember.
Wasn't that called the
Well,
I was going to school there.
it was a classroom edition put on in about 1951. The original school ended. There were steps that went down and out onto parking area down there and playground.
I was in one of those classrooms that Kennedy was killed.
Yeah.
Was this Mrs. Singleton native of here, or?
Could you
Well,
go through
There's
that?
there's quite a few of us here that went here.
That's okay.
Was that the lunchroom?
Yeah.
That's
No.
the lunchroom.
Right. The lunchroom was on this side of that building, and the library on the far side.
And then the other, you can see the gymnasium to the back.
The
The
gymnasium.
gymnasium is back there where they've got
It's-
apartments or
It's
businesses or
converted
something.
into condos.
Condos.
Yeah.
So that's the gymnasium.
Could you
So-
go through the real estate transaction or transgression? I mean, this is a school, and suddenly now this word Singleton keeps jumping in here. How's this work?
Mrs. Singleton, I think the Board of Education actually sold the property to someone, I think before Mrs. Singleton bought it, and I don't remember the history of how, but anyway, Mrs. Singleton ended up with it, and she was very conscious and appreciated the history of the school ground and so forth. she gave us permission to put the monument and to hang the picture.
And she had the
here.
vision for all this office complex
Yes,
and everything?
yes.
And she closed the road to the side road to
Oh,
the,
yeah.
you know,
She
to
had
the post office, you remember?
Yeah, the pork chop controversy
Yeah.
of the entryway down there.
There was
But
a road beside.
if anybody's interested, I also brought an aerial view of what this looked like back in '48, and it gives you a good idea of. You can look at that, and you can pass it around. You look at it close. But this is a school building before the classroom addition down here. And here's the library and lunchroom building back of it, and the gymnasium. And this is the ball field we're talking about. Their houses down here now. And the old school, the 1906 school, sat right up, right up in this corner right here. And this is the road that comes up on the Wrinkle Leg, West Blue Ridge. And this is the Greenville Highway right here. Post office now, all of that is right in here now. Right in here, I guess. There's the old post office right there. And school buses in the yard. And here's another shot at a little different angle. Shows this is the gymnasium, the library and lunchroom. Here's the school building, auditorium sticking out behind. There were 8 classrooms in this building that burned.
Did they find the arsonist?
Yes.
Oh yes, he was in. I think he's passed away now, but
Yes.
he was imprisoned, and I don't think he served nearly long enough.
No, he
But,
burned several schools in the county. It wasn't
Yeah.
just this one. He burned churches, schools, post office, all kinds of buildings. We'll talk about that in the
But he
last
interested
half
in
of
seeing
the
an aerial
semester.
view.
I was gonna say, were you related to him?
No.
But you worked for the guy that squirreled that.
Who?
He's the one that suggested.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
What was his name?
Meade Park.
Meade Park. He's the one. When I was on the school board, I knew a guy named Gene Cosby who was sent up here to try to. They thought it was related to the civil rights,
Yeah, it wasn't.
and it was not. And Meade Parks, Gene Cosby and Meade Parks
Can you speak up?
constabulary. Meade Parks ran the Times News,
He was the editor of the Times News.
and Gene Cosby was responsible. He worked for the state Board of Education. He was responsible for the integration effort in North Carolina. I got to meet him when I was on the school board in Transylvania County, and he was sent up here to help investigate all these fires that were taking place, because lots of them were schools and churches. And so Meade Parse suggested to that group that it was a volunteer fireman, because volunteer fire departments were just beginning to be formed. And sure enough, that's
Yeah, it was a member of a volunteer fire department in the county.
So he started the fires to have the fun of putting them out.
Well, he's just your typical arsonist, you know. He'd be in the FBI's behavioral profile unit right now. A lot of your serial arsonists are firemen.
So he was local?
Yeah. But at any rate, what's wonderful here is they have preserved the gymnasium, they have preserved the library and the cafeteria, and then we have this other section here. So thousands of people in Henderson County have connections to this school. Parents either went here, or they went here, or their grandparents went here, or something. Very historic school.
What famous people graduated?
Probably half of the famous people in Henderson County that was born after 1920 or before.
So this was the predecessor to all the other Henderson County schools except for Hendersonville High School.
It was no. We had a school consolidation. We had one-room schools all over the county, and then about 1920, we'll talk about East Flat Rock. They started building schools to consolidate their one-room schools and merge all these little community one-room schools into an elementary school. And when they did that, they had first grade through 11th grade all in one school. And then they started branching out by the 1930s and all, and forming actually a separate high school. And this one was their first consolidated high school, where they closed the high schools at East Flat Rock, at Tuxedo, and at Valley Hill, and those places, and brought all those just here as a high school. Originally, it started out as one-room schools and a consolidated school here for Flat Rock. And the East Flat Rock kids that were in the one-room schools down there only went 1st and 2nd grade, and then the rest of them had to walk up here until they built East Flat Rock down there in 1923.
Thank you, that is very, very
So this
Thank
high
you.
school was for Flat Rock and East Flat Rock primarily, and then
This high school was for the entire section. It was for Crab Creek, Valley Hill, Pleasant Hill, Flat Rock, Green River community, the Zirconia community, the Tuxedo community, the Mountain Page community, the Macedonia community, the East Flat Rock community, and most of the Upward community, and Barker Heights.
so the dividing line for Hendersonville would be where?
The tiny little town of Hendersonville.
See that?
Just the little bitty town of Hendersonville.